Joyful, joyful Friday. Happy Friday. Happy Freedom Friday. Happy Good Friday and Resurrection Weekend to all of you that believe in our Lord and Savior and Jesus Christ, dying for our sins and being resurrected, and are celebrating this weekend with your family, with your friends, with church, with services, however you choose to celebrate your weekend, whether you are going to church, whether you're cooking for your family, doing Easter celebration or Resurrection Sunday, sending lots of love. Hi. I am in traffic, safely with the phone, hands-free, about an hour and so away from home. So yes, it is April 18th and Good Friday, and hopefully you guys are going to ease into the weekend and do some family stuff or some household stuff or whatever it is you choose to do on this weekend. Today is April 18th, and it's also 1 year today that my dad transitioned. He was struck by a driver in a hit and run in Los Angeles, April 18th last year. Oh, nice to see you. Thanks for following me. Thanks for connecting. Hopefully we had some memorable moments. But thank you. So today makes 1 year since my dad passed away and transitioned. And then also on Monday, on the 31st, almost 3 weeks ago, my younger brother and, okay, thank you. My younger brother and my oldest daughter were in a car accident when I came back from the awakening, and I was in the airport, and my 19-year-old Kirsten and my brother Jabari were on the way to get me. They were hit by a drunk driver on the way to get me from the airport, coming from the awakening on the 31st. So thankfully they were not hurt badly, were like no broken bones. They walked away from the car, and they are in treatment and getting the help and work that they need, but they are still here. So I'm just grateful and thankful that they were kept on March 31st. And so today I went out to the tow yard to go. Finally, I had some time, because I said it's almost 3 weeks, to go get my belongings out of my car, because they were driving in my car. My little brother was driving and my daughter was the passenger, and they were hit by a drunk driver. And so today I went and saw my car, rest in peace, because it looks like it's going to be totaled out, and got my belongings and all my stuff out the car. And then my intention was to go see my grandma, who's also having some struggles and some challenges with getting older. And so from Hemet to let me start over. I went and got my nails done today. So, had a nail appointment in Moreno Valley. So Hemet to Moreno Valley to get my nails done. Also picked up my content creator to create some content while I was getting my nails done. Also had a phone session while I was getting my nails done, and then drove to Paramount, which was an hour and a half away from Moreno Valley from my nail tech, while having another phone session, because I be working and multitasking and getting it done. So drove another hour and a half to go to the tow lot to get my stuff out of my car. And RIP, the insurance is coming to get my car on Monday, and it's probably going to be totaled out. So we're going to see how we're going to move forward with that. And my kid and my brother are getting treatment. Thank God. He was arrested for being drunk and high and crazy and fighting the police and all kind of stuff. So yeah, that's that. And then I had another meeting, and then hopped back on the freeway. So now I'm in traffic, headed back to Hemet, because I have a full session tomorrow, and a youth group and anxiety management support group. So yeah, I felt some type of way today, even though I'm an advanced grief counselor, and I have all the coping skills. I woke up at 4 this morning per usual and went to the gym and got my meditation on and got my workout in and got to be on Freedom Friday with Girl Hold My Hand and community. So that was a win for this morning, early morning. Dropped the kids off at school, nail tech, pick up the stuff from the car. Oh, and so when I was going to Inglewood to see my grandma, I got off the freeway, and my intention was to get off and go down Manchester and go straight to my grandma's house. But somehow I turned left and I ended up going down Century and passing down Century and Western, which is, 1, I grew up in that area. 2, I've done fundraisers in that area. 3, I was just giving away backpacks to the homeless over there and stuff like that. But on Century and Western is where my dad was killed in a hit and run last year on April 18th. So yeah, the spirit must have led me to drive down Century to get to Western. And I was like, I thought I was on Manchester, literally. And I was like, this is not Manchester. Oh, I'm on Century. Okay, so I guess, Source in heaven wanted me to drive down the street. So I rode through the hood where I grew up at, where I've done fundraisers at, where I helped the homeless at. Unfortunately, my dad struggled with mental health issues his whole life. He was not in my life. When I was about maybe 3 or 2, he went in and out of mental hospitals and had nervous breakdowns and was diagnosed, I think, with bipolar and some things, and just, not a healthy relationship for my mom and me and stuff like that. So he kind of was out of my life when I was younger. And then my mom met my brother's dad, and, we're not going to go there on this Good Friday. But I loved him, rest in heaven as well. But that was a relationship that was filled with domestic violence and a lot of things going on with that. So I didn't have my dad, and I always dreamed of having my dad growing up, and I always dreamed of finding my dad. And my mom never talked mess about my dad. And when I grew up, maybe once, around when I was 8 or when I was 9, I saw my dad in the mall and in the streets and looking homeless, looking raggedy, looking homeless, he was homeless. And my mom was like, yeah, this is your dad, say hello and stuff like that. And I just didn't have him in middle school. And then in high school, she pretty much told me that he had a lot of mental health issues and, struggle with a lot of things, and, he would be homeless and he would get himself together and be homeless and some other things. But if I ever wanted to find him and if I ever wanted to look for him, she would help me look for him. So she would ask me, and we would talk about it in high school when she had photo albums of my dad. So I knew what he looked like. And like I said, I had a few memories of him. And I think one time I was playing in the yard and he drove past and I was like, that's my dad. I know that's my dad. So all my life, I pretty much wanted to have a relationship with my dad. And then I was 35 and he found me. He had Googled me and found some articles about me. I graduated from USC, one sexy Trojan. And when I graduated from USC, I actually went back 3 years later and I did an additional Passing the Mantle program, this clergy policy type program. And he found something about my announcement and he found me on Google and my website and emailed me. So one day I was 35 and I was coming from the gym and I got this email and it was hey, I'm your dad. Here's a picture, I want to meet you and, and talk to you. So I rushed home and I'm hey, Mom, look, this is my dad, and she's all yeah, oh shit, this is your dad. She okay, well, what you want to do? And I'm I want to meet him. And my mom never had bashed my dad, but she started telling me stuff when I was older, so I knew, what was going on. And she was like, okay, well, you can meet him. I just got to come, because if he's crazy and I got to cane him, you know, it's going to be some situations. But, you know, I want to come to y'all first meeting. So we set it up. And me and my mom and just my 2 daughters at the time, Kirsten and our Destiny, went and met up with my dad like in 2016 or something like that. And we had a good lunch. And then, you know, from there, he would come out to my fundraisers like once a month at Chuck E. Cheese and like spend time with my kids. He would call me on the phone. And we just had like, you know, a good relationship. And then I moved to Hemet in December of 2017. And then May of 2018, my mom transitioned and passed. You know, I found her, passed from a heart attack. So that was in May. And my dad came to her funeral. And, you know, we were still interacting and seeing each other. And then like a couple months later, he just disappeared. So I'm grieving the loss of my mom, and I'm like, wait a minute, where's my dad? Like, you know, homie, I ain't had you all my life. You supposed to show up now, like, you know, what's going on? Like, I called, number disconnected. So, you know, I'm grieving, then find out I'm pregnant again with my last little legend baby. And then all of a sudden I get letters in the mail, and he's incarcerated. Mental health issues and anger issues, you know. Long story short, he went off in the post office and made some threats that he shouldn't have said and got arrested and got time in jail. And it went from 3 years to 5 years because it was a riot and he had to protect himself and a bunch of stuff. So my elderly 60-year-old some dad went to jail and was in jail like from 2018 to like 2023. You know, getting A's, being a model citizen, mentoring, being a pastor, getting courses, all kinds of stuff. He was probably taking some medication too, and getting some counseling and working on himself and getting his life together, writing me and, you know, calling me all day. So 5 years. And then he got out in December of 2023, got into his program, doing well in his probation, doing well in his classes. That's all I know. And then one day he was talking to me regular. The next day he was talking to me kind of crazy about, I guess, not talking to him more than he wanted me to talk to. Like, he wanted more time when he was in jail and wanted me to talk to him more and see him more and whatever. But in 5 years I had to grieve the loss of my mom, grieve the loss of him going to jail, have a new baby, get a license, a bunch of other stuff. So I had to live life on the outside. So he felt some type of way, I guess. And then said some crazy stuff. And then we didn't talk. And that was in January of 2023. And then April, on the 18th, an aunt that I hadn't met, you know, his sister, who I have a good relationship with and keep in contact with now, called me to let me know that my dad was killed, you know, in LA by a hit and run driver. And he was like walking in the middle of the street, like homeless, like looking homeless, smelling, looking, being, he was homeless out there, being homeless in the streets. But he was in a program and he was doing well, and I know, so nobody knows, you know, how he went from getting out and doing great to being on the streets to dying in the streets. But yeah, so now it's a year later, and yeah, so last year I got certified as advanced grief counselor, you know, to help me deal with that grief and loss, and then started doing support groups to help other people, because I have lots of people dealing with grief and loss. And that's one way I've been dealing with the grief and loss of my dad, is by getting certified and specialized in grief and loss and doing all the coping skills around it and helping other people with it. And so that's what I've been doing today. And then on May 4th, it'll be celebrating 7 years since my mom transitioned. And, you know, that's a heavier grief and loss cycle, because like my mom and I were best friends. Obviously, you know, I grew up with my mom, didn't grow up with my dad. So you grieve differently over different people, different parents, different things and stuff like that. So all that said, you know, Mother's Day is coming on and Father's Day is coming on, and you know, if you don't have your mother, don't have your father, there's many ways of grief and loss and how you can deal with it. 3 weeks ago, you know, well, 4 weeks now, before I went to the awakening, so on April 22nd, I partnered with my alma mater, USC, and gave out like over 100 backpacks to the homeless with essential items like toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, blankets, and we made sandwiches and had snacks, and you know, we had volunteers get together and we went out and we gave essential items and backpacks to the homeless in the community. I do that year round with my nonprofit, walkinfaithfoundation.com or .org. You can Google it, Walk in Faith Foundation. So that's one way, like probably unconsciously, like I've honored my dad all my life. That is so, like, I just make those connections sometimes. Like, I do a lot of service work. I built a nonprofit helping the community since 2009. Last year was honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, from being a humanitarian in my community. The same streets where my dad was homeless, roaming around when I was growing up, is the same streets that I helped the homeless in. Go figure. You know, so I rode down the streets and gave him honor today. And then I also rode down 80th and Gramercy, where my mom's house was, that she had a house for about 14 years. And, you know, again, me and my mom are really close. I lived with her like the last years of her life, moved out, and 5 months later she passed away. You know, I'm the one that went home and found her and had to get her together and, you know, get her transition together. So I rode past that house, you know, and gave her honor, you know, as I went to go see my grandma and stuff. So, and I think this dress that I have on is one of my mom's dresses. I know for sure yesterday I wore one of my mom's dresses. She liked to get her nails done, so I do mine a little bit more fancier than her, but I get my nails done. She likes to get massages. We got massages together. I get massages. You know, so there's certain ways that I honor my mom unconsciously and on purpose. Certain ways I honor my dad unconsciously and on purpose. You know, for both my parents. You know, I also do tattoos and therapy. So I got tattoos to honor them and things like that. You know, because there's certain levels of pain. And there are people that go through things and cut themselves and go through things and drink their life away and go through things and self-sabotage and go through things and be homeless on the street and lose their mind and be 5150. So, you know, for me, you know, I don't want to go 5150. I don't want to be cutting on myself. You know, I'm not going to use sex as an addiction or drugs or alcohol as an addiction because that's detrimental to me and that's more harmful than helpful. So one of my coping skills is to get tattoos and to get my hair done and my nails done and get massages and, you know, take care of myself, inner and outer. You know, I'm going to go set up a counseling session because even though I'm a therapist, I have a therapist. So it's time to see my therapist, set up a Reiki session, go to a sound bowl, you know. There's some other things that I do. I called my friends today. Everybody was at work doing their thing, but usually like we'll text or send messages or like you know, maybe a voice, like a regular call. But I FaceTime my friends today, and so when they saw that I FaceTimed them, they FaceTime me back. Even, you know, one was at lunch, you know, she drive buses and stuff. Shouts out to my girl Shamika, you know, Lakia celebrating with her kid, you know, at Magic Mountain. But when they saw that I FaceTimed them, and they know, the closest people to me know today, you know, what today is to me, and know what I've been going through, you know, on other levels too. So, you know, they call me back when they could call me back just so we can see each other's face, say I love you, give each other some love, and, you know, pump each other up real quick. So make sure you have a village, you know, outside of my family, outside of my friends. I also have my Girl Hold My Hand community my safe haven community, my walk in faith community, my clients that I help support all day, and they know what's going on with me too, so we exchange some good energy and stuff. So you're not alone out here. If you're with any level of grief and loss of a job, loss of a spouse, a parent, a relationship, a divorce, a child, we all have different losses in different seasons. And, we have a tendency to want to isolate and want to do it alone and want to keep silent and just share all the good times and share all the wins and stuff like that. And that's cool, but, today was hard for me. I didn't think it was going to be that hard, but I just found myself tearing up and crying and having little moments. So, I made sure to take care of myself on my outer self, get myself together so I don't look how I feel on the inside, make myself up, dress nice, look, pamper myself on the outside. But on the inside, prayer, meditation, working out, that's physical too. Talking to friends and family, go make my counseling session. Being a part of my support group and my women's group and stepping outside of my comfort zone and sharing things with people. So I'm not just sitting in my grief and loss. I'm not just crying over here. I might get some ice cream later. I might make some cookies or something. It might be some other things I might do, light some candles. This weekend, Jesus is risen. Might do some things, or, spiritual things and stuff like that. So there's different levels. And if you need more support with grief, I have a book on Amazon, How to Build Effective Coping Skills. Link in my bio. Also, same thing in the ebook. How to cope through depression, thrive through anxiety. I'm a licensed therapist, holistic therapist. So not just the book smarts, but the street smarts and the mind, body, spiritual aspects. But definitely certified in anxiety treatment, grief management, meditation, mindfulness. I'm a trauma-informed therapist because I had lots of trauma growing up. And again, in order to save myself, I put my oxygen mask on and process my pain and trauma and face my fears and do the hard work of growth and everything like that, so I can continue to show up for others and be that vessel of light and love and be the change. Not just talk about the change, but do the things and be the change, even if it looks ugly, even if it's painful, even if it's hard, even, regardless of it, it looks like, you got to show up and show out for it. We get this one time around. We might get other lifetimes, but right now we in this lifetime, and we're not walking around with our expiration date, so nobody knows how they're going to go out. Nobody knows when they're going to go out. I didn't know I was going to find my mom, from a heart attack. I didn't know my dad was going to die in the streets. I didn't know, lots of different things. And, you don't know what your day might look like, how that will be. So make sure to live your life out loud. Make sure you live your life on your own terms. Make sure you're growing and learning and addressing the things that you feel like are triggers for you and trauma for you, so you can thrive through it and, get out of survival mode and start thriving and really enjoy the rest of your life. So I know my mom is in heaven, smelling down. I know my dad is all around me. They're here all around me. Heaven here. Energy never dies. It transmutes. It's all around you. I hear my mom sometimes when I'm talking, when I'm laughing. I see her in the mirror. I see her in me. My dad, I see some of his mannerisms and how I am and things like that. I see my dad and my mom and my kids all the time, and I be like, whoa. So I'm just running that race. I'm just, they ran so I could fly, and, I'm flying and doing all the things that I'm doing here in my season and my journey. And eventually it'll be a time I'm passing back the baton, and my kids are soaring, and they're, excelling and growing off the foundation that I've set here. So life is a transformation, on all levels. We come, we're born, we transform, but energy is always here. But if you're struggling on any level with community, you know, with grief, with loss. It's not a weakness to reach out. You know, it's nothing wrong with you to have friends and have family and go to counseling and get you a toolbox and arm you up with different things so you can continue your race and your run and your journey while you are honoring the people that ran before you. So see, I'm always honoring my ancestors that ran before me. And happy Good Friday again, and Resurrection Weekend, and all the good things. And, you know, make sure you tap into yourself and loving yourself. You cannot give what you don't have. You know, you can't give to others what you don't give to yourself. So make sure you are pouring into your cup first. It's you and your source and you, and pouring from your cup, from your overflow. So make sure you fill up your cup and overflow so you can pour from your excess. And yeah, have a good weekend on purpose.